In Ross chapter 4, he begins this chapter talking about accents and labeling the tone of syllables. We've already talked about this in our chapter 3 material, but I created a handout just to formalize what he says here, and also to also mention the fact here that, remember, I do differ from Ross on how to label a shiva, a vocal shiva, not as a syllable. So where he would divide things, he might consider a letter with a vocal shiva under it to constitute its own syllable and put a tone marker over it, whereas I wouldn't do that. So let's just, again, talk real quickly about labeling syllables for their tone, where the placement of the stress is. In our handout, Hebrew syllables, Hebrew places the standard accent or tone on the final syllable. So you should always assume that. Always assume you stress the last or final syllable unless something is marked otherwise. If there is an accent on a word that is not final, not the final syllable, then the accent or the tone is going to be indicated with this little symbol. Okay, looks like a sideways circumflex, and that's going to go over the consonant that has that syllable stressed. So melech is one of our examples. Notice it has the little accent mark right there. Why is it there? Because normally you assume final syllable stress unless marked otherwise, and this is a first syllable stress word. So not melech, but melech. Melech. Eretz has first syllable stress, and therefore there's an accent mark there for earth or land. What we need to do is make sure that we know how to label our syllables for tone in relationship, or the syllables of a word in relationship to the tone. Each syllable in a word is going to be labeled in one of these following ways. So we'll use the T for tonic. This means that the syllable that is so labeled is the stressed syllable. PT is pretonic. This is the syllable right before the stressed syllable. And then PPT means propertonic, and this is for any syllable before the pretonic syllable. That is to say, if we had 4 or 5 or even 6 syllables in a word, the propertonic syllable could be labeling more than one syllable. In relation to the tonic syllable, it's 2 or more syllables away from the tone syllable or before the tone syllable. And then we'll write the word post over any syllable that's post-tonic, which simply means that it's right after the stressed syllable. Now, there is a requirement in Hebrew that you can only stress the last syllable or the second to the last syllable. You won't see a stressed syllable anywhere else. So it's either the last or the second to the last. That's why you'll never have multiple post-tonic syllables, like you could have several pre- and propertonic syllables. Okay? There will only, if the stress isn't on the final syllable, it'll be on the one right before the final, so there will only be one post-tonic syllable. So some examples here. If we start on the left, we have melech. Since the accent mark is visible, we're going to label that one T. This one is post-tonic because it's after the tonic syllable. With Shmuel, remember that's a vocal shiva right here. So we don't divide to the left of it. We go to the next consonant and full vowel and divide it depending on whether it's open or closed. And here it's open. And L is closed. But that's not important. It's not as important as knowing the tone here. Where's the tone? There's no accent mark over here on the non-final syllable, so the syllable must be stressed on the final syllable. So that's why we have a T here, and then the one right before the tonic is the pretonic syllable. Eretz is like melech. This is tonic because it's marked, so the next syllable is post-tonic. Over here, I have Carmeli. Now you tell me, is this syllable, is this shiva silent or vocal? It's silent. Anytime I have 2 shivas in the middle of a word, the first is always silent. The second is always vocal. And if I'm dividing, I'm always going to divide right in between them, which follows the rule that we learned. You always divide silent shavas to the left, and you always divide vocal shavas to the right. And we've just done that. Kar, and then mali. Kar, mali. Where's the tone? It's on the final syllable. That's where we expect it to be. There's no accent mark over here to tell us to do otherwise. Tonic, right before pretonic. And then over here I have hof kad tem. Now, you don't know yet why that is a kametz ketuf, but that is the short O here. And if it's short, the shava is silent. And if it's silent, I always divide where? To the left of a silent shava, because that's closing the syllable. Hof, and then there's the consonant with its vowel. That shava in the middle of a word, is that silent or vocal? Silent. How do I know? I look to the right, and I ask, is the vowel to the right long or short? And the answer is, pathak is short, so the shava is silent. And I always divide where? With silent shavas? To the left. Very good. So it's hof, kad, tem. Why am I putting a T over this final syllable? Because it's the final syllable and, I assume, final syllable stress. That means this one is pretonic and this one is proprotonic. If I had another syllable, what would that one be? Proprotonic. That's right. So that's how we label syllables for their tone. Let me make one more comment here about accentuation. These accent marks right here that you see, these are not Masoretic accent marks. One of the things that we talked about at the beginning of our class was that back in earlier forms of Hebrew, the consonants were represented in the writing, but not the vowels. The Masoretes were the scribes that added the vowel pointing. But they didn't just add vowel points. They also added a system of stress, or what are also described as cantillation marks, that would have regulated how the text was chanted. And the Masoretes marked every stressed syllable, even the final syllable. Okay? They didn't use this little doohickey here to mark accent. They actually had a rather complicated set of accent marks that they used. One of the accent marks that you were introduced to in your homework from chapter 3 is called a saluk. So let me just make a comment here about this. Let's say that you have the word davar. Okay, what does davar mean? Word, matter, thing. When you come to the end of a verse in Hebrew, you're going to see a double diamond or a double dot indicating that you've come to the end of a verse, and you will see an accent mark in the Hebrew Bible, and it's a little vertical line that looks like this. So the accent mark is called saluk. Okay? That is an accent mark. This double diamond or double dot, that is called sof pasuk. The word sof pasuk means like verse division or verse divider or something like that. The two will always occur together. Last word of a verse will always have sof pasuk following it and a saluk marking the stress. Now, what do you notice about the word davar? Davar is already final syllable stressed, isn't it? You just always stress the final syllable. So do the Masoretes absolutely have to tell you to accent it? No. But their Masoretic accentual system always marks the tone syllable no matter where it is, whether it's the final one or the non-final one. Okay? So you'll just get used to that. You'll always see an accent mark marking the tone. And there's a lot more than just that one. Okay? So be aware. Ross is going to slowly introduce you to some of the most common accent marks as you start going through the homework. So read the footnotes, and there was a footnote about the Seleuc accent mark in Chapter 3 homework. All right? That's really important for you to know when we start talking about Chapter 4 material here in 4.2. So let's look there. In Ross 4.2, he introduces us to something called a method. And in order to make sure we understand this little section properly, we have to remind ourselves that there is this accent mark called a Seleuc that we just talked about that always accompanies the Sof Pasuk to end a verse. Another accent mark that we're going to meet is called the Athnak, and it looks like this. This will be right beside the vowel, just like Seleuc will always be beside the vowel that's being stressed. The metheg looks like this. It's a little vertical stroke that goes under a consonant and beside a vowel. So what's my problem here? I have two completely different things, a Seleuc and a metheg, both of which use the same symbol. All right? And that can be confusing at first. Here's the important thing to know. When this little vertical stroke next to a vowel symbol is a Seleuc, it is an accent mark, and it tells you where the stress is. When we meet a metheg is telling you not that the vowel is stressed, rather, it's telling you to preserve the pronunciation of the vowel that it's next to and not to hurry over the pronunciation to get to the stress. Or to put it another way, a metheg never marks a tone syllable. It always marks a vowel somewhere before the tone syllable.